today. Okay, perfect. So then, which is advanced echoes of a final answer. So if you follow the book that we read, is Jesus. So it's the Bible Jesus read. So by Philip Yancey. So this is the final chapter. The final chapter. So and hopefully, who knows, we might find that final answer. Final answer. Okay. So this is what we will try to do today. And what I would like us to do, we will jump into our study right away. And as we go through our study, I would like you to also express your own struggles, and we will try to walk through this, and then we will try to find that final answer, even to our own personal struggles. Hopefully, so we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so how we will do it? We will do it by making three steps, and then the final step. The road to Emmaus experience. Why this is also very important, because if we were to if we were to pinpoint one element in the New Testament, when the messianic expectations of the Old Testament were truly explained, that was the moment. Do you hear what I'm saying? So if we were to pinpoint just one little dot in the New Testament, when all messianic anticipations, texts about Messiahs from the Old Testament came to existence in the mindset, in the memory of the New Testament and also Christianity, that is the moment. So if we ever, even if now we talk about like this text is probably points to Messiah, or that text probably points to Messiah, if Paul, Peter, and all the apostles, they drew from that experience, Emmaus, the road to Emmaus. So do you see how serious that element is? So if we truly want to understand all those advanced echoes, we need to go to this story. Do you hear? Do you understand what? Yeah. Do you understand why we go there? Does it make sense? Okay, thanks a lot. I love your approval. I love your approval. Okay, so that is what? One. Then what we will also do, we will look through three passages from the Old Testament that Jesus himself alluded to when he referred to himself, and how that anticipation, messianic expectation was. And finally, we will try to see in all of this, we will try to see Jesus in our personal life, answering the question why this matters. Okay? Okay? So this is the task. Ooh, now let's buckle up as always. Okay. So this is the first question. So why do messianic expectations matter? So that is the because we all talk about Messiah in the Old Testament. So why does it matter? So let's jump into that. So if somebody could read those three verses from Luke chapter 24. So we're in Luke chapter 24, and we will read from verse 13 onwards. So could somebody read these? Please, yes.
Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him.
Okay, so what do we see? Describe the picture. What do we see in this story? Describe it. So what do you envision? So how many people are walking? Two. Okay, so this is good. What is their emotional state right now as we read about it?
Stressed.
Courage, disappointed.
So what is the source of that discouragement, disappointment? Christ's death. Yes. So why Christ's death to them was such an incredible why is it? Why that is critical? Why Christ's death?
He was supposed to save them from the Romans.
Okay, so you see, because there was some anticipation. Yes. So that disappointment in that faith and anticipation. Okay, very good. So we will see that as well. Now, so where do they walk? Where do they go? They go from where to where?
They're going to Emmaus.
Yes, so from Jerusalem to Emmaus. So what is the distance between Jerusalem and Emmaus? How many hours do you think it might take for you to walk that distance? Just tell me. Approximately. 2 hours, yeah, 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours. Because the speed of a human being usually walking is about 3 miles per hour, approximately 5 kilometers per hour, approximately. So this is slightly different because there's some mountainous terrain, so it probably will take about 3 hours. Yeah, would we agree?
Yes.
3 hours. So the entire walk is about 3 hours. Okay, so 3 hours. So now what we see, so how many people again? Okay, so we will know their names later because the name is not their name, but one of the person. What do you know? But give us like who was that? Whose name? What was his name? Cleopas. Okay, good. So this is an inside information because you read the text. You remember the text. So Cleopas. So two of them. Now here's a little very interesting detail. Cleopas and what? We always thought that it was what? But why two men? Does it ever say anywhere in this story that it was Cleopas and another guy? It says Cleopas and his companions. This is what the text is. Now, okay, so this is where the text is. So let's read the following verse 17. Did somebody read verse 17? Okay, so recognize them and recognize them. Can somebody read verse 17 and 18?
He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?"
Okay, so you see, so one of them is Cleopas, now we know. Okay, one of them is Cleopas, but the second person is not named. So there is another text in John chapter 19, verse 25. There are three Marys who are by Jesus's cross. So let's read that text. So it's John chapter 19, verse 25. Could somebody read that text? But standing by the cross were his mother and his mother's sister, the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. So you see three Marys, and one Mary, her name is Mary, the wife of Cleopas. So it's a different reading, just letter E. But traditionally, they also believe that was the wife of Cleopas. So what is happening? Perhaps perhaps another woman who was working, another companion of Cleopas was actually his wife. So two of them are walking back to their home. And why it is also another evidence why this is probably the case, because so when I talk about it, I see that some faces express this dissatisfaction of this information. Why a woman is walking with Cleopas? Because it should be a man. But why? Why it has to be a man? Why it couldn't be another woman? Cleopas and his wife were walking back from the feast of the Passover. And the Passover was the time when not only you and your wife were supposed to go to Jerusalem, but also your children. Remember what Jesus, when he was 12 years old, he also walked with his mother and his father. So when Cleopas with his companion are walking back, it might as well be his wife. So here is the question. Why is it important to bring Mary, the wife of Cleopas, or another woman into this story? Any comments?
So if she was the sister of Mary, Jesus' mother, who taught him the prophecies, taught him the Bible, you would think there'd be a little more insight there, especially because the angel told Mary that the sword would pierce her soul, but apparently not. They still had different expectations and had to be taught. I mean, maybe she and Mary weren't close, but she's there. She's on the cross. But still didn't understand the prophecies that Mary had taught Jesus.
Wow. And who knows, maybe Mary herself was also a little disappointed in all of this situation. Yeah, expectations. Very good. Very good point. Thank you. Yes, please.
I don't have a problem with Mary, but say that when they got to Emmaus and they were just getting, they recognized Jesus, they ran back to. I don't know. As a woman, I'm thinking I got to run 7 miles back.
Good, good.
Oh my! I hope he wants to carry me along.
Yeah.
But 7 miles, seems like a little hard.
Yeah.
With that kind, I thought I don't think about running 7 miles back. I just came from there. Do I have to run back there? Tell them I have no problem with that.
Yeah, okay, very good point also. Okay, good. I don't know the answer to those questions.
In their thirties and everybody runs in their thirties.
She was trained to be fit. She probably also joined the gym also in the mouse, the little gym in the mouse. Okay. Yeah. So why? So this is, you see, in the Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of Luke is very prominent about identity and pinpointing and returning us back to that one important element. Women in the life of Jesus matter. In fact, in the Gospel of Luke, it says that it was the women who were supporting Jesus's ministry. They were providing financially and by providing food and so forth. But that is so important because in the culture, when male are the male and they're so dominant, what we see a complete shift. Expectations change. This is what you expect. You expect a male-dominated world. In the Gospel of Luke, women are the ones who actually move the mission of Jesus's breaking kingdom into the world. And we see it in the very story because that son of Mary is recorded also in what gospel? Not in the Gospel of Matthew, nor in the Gospel of Mark, nor in the Gospel of John, but in the Gospel of Luke. So do you see how critical that becomes? So now let's continue reading and then we will discover something even more exciting. Okay, could somebody read verse 19 through 21?
What things, he asked. About Jesus of Nazareth, they replied. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel.
Okay, so then we come back to that very important element. Why were the people of who walked to Emmaus? So now we'll just say Cleopas and his wife. Why, as they walked, why they were disappointed, or why were they discouraged? Because what was that expectation?
Or hope that one of them was going to redeem Israel.
So the first question that Jesus asks is what things? So it's in response to this. You see, what are you discussing together as you walk along? So they walk together. What are you discussing? And what is their response? So
That doesn't know.
sorry?
Are you the only one that doesn't know about these things?
But exactly. So when Jesus asked them that question, what are you discussing together as you walk alone? So they walk, and then Jesus asked them that question, and what happens immediately?
But still,
Do you see what is happening? So now, I want you to see this picture. So two people are walking. Then Jesus approaches to them. He starts walking with them, asks that question, and the minute Jesus asks that question, what are you discussing? What is their reaction?
Stop.
Wait a second. One of them, so are you the only one visiting Jerusalem? Because we walk from Jerusalem. Are you the only one who doesn't know the things that have happened? So, shock. And then the response of Jesus is, what things? And then so what is the response of Cleopas? About what? What is the first statement that he makes? About
Jesus of
was a prophet.
Was a prophet.
he was what? What type of prophet?
Powerful word, where you see
And before whom?
how the people.
So you see, here is that expectation one. Do you see that expectation one? Jesus of Nazareth, number one, he was supposed to be who? A prophet. Powerful in what? Word and deed. Before whom? God and people. So what is the next thing that happened that they describe? The chief. They sentenced him to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. So how do we ensure that our hopes are not leading to great disappointments? So, yeah, so help me to understand, what is usually, what do we see? How do we perceive now the Messiah? How our expectations of the Messiah or Jesus Christ, or the deeds of God can also lead us to disappointment. Yes.
Almost like they let their emotion take over and forgot the facts.
Emotions and facts.
Like they forgot everything that they've been taught generation upon generation, that institutional education and the emotion and loss didn't happen the way they wanted it. It almost just seems like they forgot the facts.
So institutional, very good point. So yeah, let's talk about more. Yeah, please.
It became very concrete in their understanding. They understood it was going to happen in a very specific way. Second coming of David of Moses, they were very concrete in their understanding. We can get the same way too. We're not open to the Spirit's meeting to enhance our understanding.
And those, yeah, so they were concrete in their understanding of what they, so very concrete. Messiah. Okay, very interesting.
So when we're faced with a problem, we have an idea of how it should be resolved. And I think what happened to them is their idea of how it should be resolved didn't happen. That was their disappointment.
Very good point. Okay.
He kind of made an important nuanced. I was gonna say, how do you answer the question? How do we ensure our hopes are not leading us to great disappointments? And I would say, try to see the bigger picture. Right? It's not in the moment necessarily. Maybe we'll be disappointed by the immediate answer, but trying to see like long-term goals. That's how it is.
Yeah, please. Yeah. 1, 2, and 3. Yes. 4. Yes.
Jesus bringing them back to the word. I think that's what they have been taught. And we've been in that situation. Instead of listening to Gary, we could listen to the word.
So not to listen to Tom, Dick, and Harry and Harry. Yeah. But go back to the word, which is very important because so often we know the solution to the problem. And how many solutions to the problem we usually find or in our mind? Let's just be realistic. 1 or 2, like if we are super strategic, we will have 2 just in case. So, but because and then how many anticipations we have, like what the paths for our children? How many paths for our children we usually try to direct them to? 1 or 2. But then when it comes to Jesus's world, he said, "I have the ways from me to you are like the sand." This is what he does, how he describes it in the book of Psalms. It's not about your descendants. It's about the ways. The plans for you are like the sand. So many plans that I have for you, and you think just about 2 grains of sand. So if those 2 grains of sand do not fall into that your great narrative of the success of my life, great narrative of the success of my life, 2 paths. This or this, and everything else, I'm so disappointed, I don't have a job anymore. And Jesus says, but wait a second. This is the time when you should have a job now, because this is my path for you. You will be restored. Yes.
So if you watch The Chosen, you see where the disciples are very confused by Jesus healing people all the time because they were expecting a warrior Messiah. They quote verses all the time about the warrior Messiah. They have their weapons ready to use. They don't understand Jesus at all. But if you go back and read Isaiah 53 and some of the other Isaiah, there's no way you see that in that. And so they're being very selective in which prophecies they focus on. So I think one of the things we can do is just try very hard to read whenever we see something, to take it all into account and not just focus on what appeals to us.
Okay, very good point. So we will see that in a moment. So Carl, yes.
Just, it goes with what you just said, Oleg. Disappointment is a normal thing. And when we had primarily two paths in our thoughts, we're going to be facing disappointment all the time. It's so my question is, what do we do with disappointment?
Very good. And so let's see how how we will try to answer that question now. Yes, please.
Yeah, it's interesting that they were disappointed that he went to Israel, but actually he had redeemed Israel. Right?
But not the way they anticipated.
So he had actually, in reality, had redeemed Israel and the whole world, because scribe dialogue redeemed the whole world. But they had not really received the reality of their redemption.
Yeah, not with swords, not with sword and weapons. Yes.
My question is, why did they choose these two people? And I think one thing is they were connected with them, but also that they understood his mission to redeem Israel. They weren't looking to be the chosen and take over the world. They understood what his mission was. So that means they were well connected with God, and that's good for each other.
Beautiful, but beautiful comment, because why did Jesus choose to walk with them? Because they were disappointed. So, and when we disappointed, trust me, he is walking with us. One and two, yes. Okay, Julia.
It's a small comment. I don't think it was just disappointment. I think it was heartbroken.
Yeah, okay.
And that's very painful and very hard. So.
Yeah. Okay, so final comment, and then we'll move to the next one.
So earlier, the biggest slide, the verse said, he caused them not to recognize. Now, why do you, I'm putting the question out there. Why was that?
So yeah.
They were kept from recognizing.
Yeah, so this phrase is interesting. So it's hard to decide. So it's not he didn't do it. It's not his deed. It's just they were kept from recognizing. So it's almost something was preventing from them to recognize him.
You don't think it was intentional?
But I don't know. But we will see. I don't know, honestly. I don't.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because I was thinking maybe he wanted an honest opinion from them. Because if they do that, Jesus Christ, maybe it would alter the way they've been thinking.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so let's move to the next phrase, the next passage, and then we will see how it all unfolds. So, can somebody read verse 21 through 24? Please.
All right.
Yes.
What is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said. They did not see Jesus.
So do you see what the author is doing again? So just what we see that Jesus is when the story is remembered, how Cleopas described this, what had happened in Jerusalem after Jesus was resurrected. Who went to the tomb? What was the response of the apostles when the women ran back and told them that Jesus is no longer there?
Didn't believe it.
Didn't believe they had to see themselves.
Once again, whoa, no. So it's a grave mistake that the male usually do. Like, do not trust your women. The women, sorry, not women. Women. The only reason why I say women because I have 3 in my household. So if I do not trust Kate or Elise or Julia, I'm in trouble. So, and then, but I ran to the tomb. Are you sure? And somebody, of course I am sure. So trust. Do you see that? And then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as. Of course. Of course. So do you see what Luke is doing again? So you're just like, guys, you need to trust me. It's just women will propel the mission of Christ. So just that is basically another reminder. So here's the main question. It's just, how does the kingdom now reinstate the reputation of all complete awe. So do you see how it's like even these messianic expectations, when the Messiah comes, everything will be restored, including things that usually are by cultures are deemed wrong maybe, but they will be restored because humanity will come to its realization of what human soul should do, what values should be reinstated. Does it make sense? So do you see this? Now let's move to the next one. So what we see next, Jesus is actually, this is what Jesus' response, immediate response is. He said to them, what is he saying? Somebody needs to do this. Okay, we need to, it's a collective reading. How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have come to suffer sins and then and beginning with Moses, all the prophets, he is putting to them, said in all scriptures. Okay, so how many hours the trip took? About 3 hours. So now those 2.5 hours, because probably for half an hour they were walking by themselves, and then for 2.5 hours, this is what is happening. Number one, Jesus says, this is what I want you to understand. How foolish and how slow to believe if you believe in the Messiah who will redeem with swords or whatever that may be, because the purpose of the Messiah is to come and to suffer these things and then enter to glory. That is number one. Number two, beginning with what? Moses and the prophets. He started telling them the story. So and this is what also we see in the Philippians book, which is the Bible Jesus read, which is Torah, Nevi'im, prophets, and then Ketuvim, which is the writings. So you see, that's why it's called Tanakh, T-N-K, Tanakh. So this is how they would describe it. So the Old Testament is Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. So Jesus became with Moses, and these 5 books that are written by Moses. Then he moved to Nevi'im, and then he probably continued with Ketuvim also, which is the final portion, which is the writings, the book of Psalms, Ecclesiastes, and First and Second Kings, and then the Chronicles, the book of Chronicles. So let's go to the first section, which is Torah. This is this is the very greatest prophecy about the Messiah that they would all perceive. So look, in addition to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. So this is what is recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15. Deuteronomy. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet. Remember the response of those two walking to Emmaus? A prophet who was powerful in word and in deed. So here's the prophecy. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your brothers. It is to him you shall listen. So do you see the connection? Now, here is another very interesting point. Do you remember this story? It's the story of Transfiguration. Remember the story of Transfiguration? So who was standing next to Jesus in the story of Transfiguration?
And Elijah.
Moses and Elijah. Who is Moses? Moses. And Elijah is the prophet. So here is beginning from Moses and ending with the prophets. Are you with me? This is what Jesus, remember that Jesus on the road to Emmaus, he talks about these 2 elements, Moses and the prophets. And look what this text says. God himself says it. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, this is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him. Do you hear that? Did you see this word? Listen to him. Look at what it says here. It is to him you shall listen, Deuteronomy. Do you see the connection?
Yes.
Here is this prophet. Just like prophet Moses was given the law, and then he gave it to the nation of Israel. This is what Jesus is doing now. listen to him. Okay, so what does it mean to listen in the context of the law and commandments and statutes and everything else? What does it mean to listen? What does it?
This is important.
Pay attention.
So do you see why it is so critical for us to understand that, number one, Messiah is prophet greater than even Moses? Why do we need to listen then? What does it mean to listen then? The instructions are important. Any other thoughts?
Got a question though. How strong is the word prophet to, let's say, that time in the Bible? And how strong the word prophet is to us today?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because when you hear the word prophet, what is usually what does come to your mind?
Prophesy.
What?
Prophesy.
Prophesy. So what does it mean?
Foretell.
To tell in the future.
Right.
Yeah. So there is, did you hear Moses prophesying anything like in the future? Not necessarily. He was not saying, okay, in this year and this year of God and so forth, this what will happen.
Well, but there was the land of Canaan that they promised them. That was their future.
Yeah, exactly. But so the purpose of the prophet is to talk to the consciousness of the world, of the society. Talk to the consciousness of the society. Prophet is the one who prophesy to stand prophetos, which means to speak before, not to foretell, because this is what we usually think about when we talk about the prophecy, but to say something that would appeal to the consciousness, appeal to, and call all of us to change our ways of living. So that is basically what we see in this context also.
Yeah, because I see nowadays, I mean, you hear people from other churches as they say, well, he's a prophet, he's prophesying and he's speaking things that doesn't make any sense or something. So, I don't know, but people now, when they say prophet, they think that there's something is a crazy dude or something like that. So.
Yeah. And even the fact, for instance, like in Adventist tradition, what we see, we talk about Ellen White as being who? Prophet. So, and what does it mean that she is the prophet? If she is the prophet, does it mean that she foretells what will happen in 2020, 2030?
She should be listened to.
Because she appeals to the consciousness of the society. So the prophet is the one who appeals and says, okay, so let's do something about it. Right. So yeah, any other thoughts? Let's move to the following one. So remember we talked about Torah, which is in Torah. Jesus is the prophet greater than Moses. So the next one is Nevi'im, which is the prophets. So now we come to the prophets. So now what do the prophets talk about when they talk about the Messiah? We are turning to Isaiah chapter 53. And this is exactly what Jesus also alluded in the story. But he was what? Pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. And by his wounds, we are healed. And then, so this is basically what we see. So we see what type of Messiah do we see? So the first one in the book of Deuteronomy, the Torah, we see the Messiah who is the prophet like Moses. But in the prophets, when the prophets describe the Messiah, how do they describe the Messiah? Not just here, but also remember the book of Obadiah, the book of Jeremiah, the crying. So it's the Messiah is always wounded. In the process of suffering, crushed, because he cares for the people so much that he says, you know what, I'm willing to die for you. So it's just like Torah is the prophet. Here we see the Messiah who says, you know what, I feel your pain so deeply that I am willing to be in your pain with you. And I want to lead you from that pain. Let's walk together. This is what the prophets are. And we see it throughout. So this is what we also see in the road to Emmaus. how foolish you are and how slow to believe that all the prophets, did not the Messiah have come to do what? And then enter into glory. So here is a very important question, at least to me, and I please help me to understand this. What does it mean that the Messiah redeems from suffering through suffering? Because that redemption is redemption from suffering through suffering. What does it mean? Why? How?
So if we as parents knew that our children were going to suffer a major illness, we were given the option to take that illness on ourselves to keep them from having the illness. That's what he's talking about. He took on the pain of our sin so that we wouldn't have to have that if we accept it.
And those of you who have children, I wish I had triple version of those allergies. And I wish Kate would not have those. Yeah, okay, wow.
Part of it too is the way he defeated death, which is the result of our sin, because he had to die. That's how he saved us from the consequence of our sin. In order to defeat the suffering of death, he suffered death.
Mm-hmm. To defeat the suffering of death, he needed to suffer death. Yeah. Wow. Crushed. Okay. How does it make a difference in the midst of your suffering? What brings you hope in the midst of our suffering? Does anything bring hope? Like, how does this idea of the Messiah, of Jesus Christ, how does it make a difference in our suffering?
Because I don't have to pay. You paid. You don't have to. Eternal death.
Okay.
There's a passage in the Bible which says that consider the suffering of Jesus, that when you are tempted, consider the fact that has suffered beyond what you can even imagine. So there is no suffering that we go through that he has not been through. And I think that brings hope that he understands for sufferings and despair, if we're in despair, and that we can go to him.
Mm-hmm. So and you mentioned something very critical. It's that hope, because that suffering was conquered. That suffering will be conquered, and that suffering will be brought to an end. So that is something that is also that is a critical element. It's just that suffering is the end will come. The end will come to that suffering. So here's a little illustration by Henry Nouwen. And what he does, he actually, it's in his book, The Wounded Healer. So The Wounded Healer is the book. And what he does, he actually quotes the Messiah. He quotes it's in Talmud, the description of the Messiah in the Talmud. So it's a Jewish writing. And this is how he describes the story. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi came upon Elijah. You remember? Moses and Elijah during the transfiguration experience. So he came to the prophet, to Elijah. So here do you see the prophets, so beginning with Moses and the prophets, Elijah the prophet, while he was standing at the entrance of Rabbi Simeon ben Yochai's cave. So one rabbi comes to the second rabbi, and then he sees Elijah standing by the cave. He asked Elijah, when will the Messiah come? So this rabbi comes, this is what we all anticipate. So when will the Messiah come? Elijah replied, go and ask him yourself. Go and ask Messiah yourself. And then the response of that rabbi is, wait a second, where is he? I missed him coming. I missed it. Sitting at the gates of the city. He is sitting at the gates of the city. Okay. Very many people are sitting at the gates of the city. How shall I know him? That is the question that the rabbi asks, how shall I know the Messiah? And then he continues. He is sitting among the poor, covered with wounds. The others unbind all their wounds at the same time and then bind them up again. But he unbinds only one at a time and then binds it up again, saying to himself, perhaps I shall be needed to help someone else bind up their wounds. And if so, I must always be ready so as not to delay for a moment. He is the Messiah, the wounded healer. By compassion of Jesus, when you are with the wounded healer is the one who is capable of healing the world. And talking about like bringing it to our lives, what is that glue that binds us all together, the humanity together?
Empathy.
What is it?
Empathy.
Because have you seen a person in your life who hasn't experienced suffering? And because I know what suffering is, then I also can suffer with you.
It's empathy.
That empathy, that uncommon compassion, when your inner organs are moved, when you see the pain of another being, and not just human being, but also even other beings. And that, if it wasn't for that empathy, our world would collapse. So now, the next element is the key. So Messiah is the, sorry? In the Ketuvim, in the writings. In Ketuvim, the Messiah, so we talked about Torah, Jesus as the prophet. In prophets, Jesus is the wounded, suffering Messiah. And then when it comes to writings, and writings is our response to God's presence in our life. So this is what our anticipation is, our anticipation. And this is what the promise is. The Lord will extend your mighty scepter from Zion, saying, rule in the midst of your enemies. So this is based on the book of Psalms. Jesus is who? Jesus is the king. And then Psalm 110 continues. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are the priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. So the next two elements that Jesus probably also alluded to, and this is what we see also in other writings of the New Testament, that Messiah is also supposed to be the king and the priest. So do we remember that? Because even the fact when Jesus was born, that the gifts that were brought to him, remember there was 3 gifts, many magi probably, we don't know how many, it doesn't say how many magi came to him, but 3 gifts were brought. So what were those 3 gifts? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So gold is we talk traditionally that it's what? It's a representation of the king. Frankincense is the representation of what? Of the priest, and the myrrh is the representation of
Burial.
Of the burial, of the suffering. So you see how the Messiah is presented also as the king, the priest, and the one who will die and who will suffer. So that is why. Why is it so important to have a multifaceted understanding of the Messiah and of Jesus' life now? Jesus is who? Suffering Messiah. Jesus is the king. Jesus is the priest, and Jesus is the prophet. Why is it so critical to understand that? And not just one facet of the Messiah.
Avoid disappointment.
Wow.
Avoid disappointment.
To avoid disappointment? Do we see this? Do we sense it? Let's talk, please explain more. Will it help if we have a multifaceted understanding of Messiah to avoid this disappointment? Will it help us to avoid the disappointment?
I was thinking it's more than just the Messiah, it's a multifaceted view of life.
Wow. Yes.
When we have a single view of life, we risk disappointment.
Yeah. Single view of life, we risk disappointment. Very good.
Well, one thing I was thinking is that you were talking through earlier of the suffering and suffering by cleansing of suffering through suffering. And it's you have this view of the world, the way Messiah was supposed to be, who he was supposed to be, what he was supposed to do, what he did, especially at this time. And there's a little bit of suffering when it doesn't come to fruition the way that you wanted it to. But then that suffering is cleansed when you see who the prophet, the king, the Messiah truly is, and what you would never experience, your mind can't comprehend how great that glory can truly be when you, after you go through that suffering and understand who he is.
Very good point. Okay. So now, this is the conclusion of this chapter is, as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he was going farther. But they urged him strongly. What was the urge?
Be with us.
Stay with us. For it is nearly evening. The day is almost over. So he went in to stay with them. And then look what happened. When he was what? At the table with them. He did what? What else? What then did he do? Gave thanks. What? Broke it and began to give it to them. And then what had happened? And they recognized him. And he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other. What did they ask?
We're not our eyes. Why are you talking to us?
So when is Jesus truly seen and recognized? When we tell the prophecies. When is Jesus truly seen and recognized?
You spend time with.
He blessed the bread.
When we break bread together. We can talk however many hours we want to talk about something, but if you do not break bread together, it cannot be seen. And the success of anything that happens in our life is when we get together and break bread
And give thanks.
and give thanks. We take, break, give thanks. And that's why this formula, take, thank, break, and give, it's throughout. Do you remember Jesus, when he was at the table, he took bread, so Luke 24, but then before that, remember when the Holy Supper or the communion service or the Lord's Supper, however we want to call it, so Jesus did what? Takes bread, he gave thanks, broke, and gave. Remember the feeding of the 5,000, what did Jesus do? Take, give thanks, break, and give, because this is exactly what it means to actually experience Jesus. So and then look at the response of the crowd. They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." And then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when what? When they broke that. So let me share with one. This is what I share, like a little moment that had happened to me when I was volunteering as a chaplain at the hospital in Orlando, that Central Hospital. And when I entered the room, it was a critical care unit. And when I entered the room, I saw a lady in her bed. And because I actually was called to visit them because they said they left a note that she's a Buddhist and she would like to see a Buddhist priest. And I teach world religions, so I said, let me try. So the chaplain's office, they actually left it because they received it early in the morning. And then they said, Oleg will be in, so let's let him handle that. So I said, okay, no problem, let me do it. So I said, I entered the room and then, so I knew that the patient was a Buddhist. So I came to her and she looked at me and I said, yeah, I'm one of the chaplains here. And she asked me, are you a Buddhist? I said, almost. So because I could say almost because Buddhist is more about tradition and philosophy than a religion. So I could fly, like we could go with that. So then, and so I see both of them and then she was intubated. So she couldn't talk. When she could talk, but you need to very carefully listen to what she's saying. Her name was A, and then so we talked with A, and then she said, "So are you Buddhist?" I said, "Almost," and then we continued the conversation, and then she turned to her mom and she said, "But she's a Christian," and their mom. I said, "So how do you feel?" And the mom said, I don't know because I don't think we can pray together. I don't know what will happen to her. And I don't, so she was, there was a tension between a Buddhist patient and her mother. And the Buddhist patient was in her like late 40s and the mother was like 70s. So they were, and she was sitting next to her and, but there was some discontent, some sort of tension. So then I said, okay, so the story of Buddhism is a beautiful story. It's about and then I started telling the story to her. Just to enter into this conversation, I said, isn't that incredible that one man whose name was Siddhartha Gautama, who decided to leave all the beauty of the palace and just walk out from the palace because he recognized the power of suffering, even though he grew up without suffering, but then he recognized that the suffering is real. And then he walked on with one purpose, to find a way out of suffering. So that's why he left his wife and the son laying there. He walked out, then of course they came back and they reunited, but the main goal was how could we find a way out of suffering? And then I turned to the mother and I say, but isn't that incredible that about 700 years after that experience, we also learned about another man who was walking this earth, and he said, you know what? I will be suffering for the purpose of eliminating suffering. I will go through suffering for the purpose of eliminating suffering. And the mother said, and his name was Jesus. And the mother looked at me and she said, are you a Buddhist? I said, but isn't that the message that is beautiful in this story? And then I said, so let's do this. Let's meditate and pray together. What we will do, we'll just think about what is happening right now in this moment, and then we'll pray. Hey, would you mind if we do it? Hey, please pray. So we prayed, we stood up, like stood still for some time, and then I said a few words, and then we prayed together, and then the mother was her eyes lit up. So then the following time, when I was back in this room, I brought a book, and the book is called it's the Book of Joy. It's written by Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama. Desmond Tutu is an Archbishop of Africa, Christian Archbishop, and Dalai Lama is a Buddhist leader of Buddhism. So I brought it to them, and then I gave this book to them. So they started reading. So we started reading together. Actually, the first chapter was read when I was there. So we read together, and then they continued reading. The book was their table book for some time. So then one day I came back to her, and then her mother was not there, but I saw the tube was gone. The tube was gone, and then there was a bowl of soup and saltine crackers. And then I said, oh, so what is that? And she was like, yeah, this will be the first day when I will actually try solid food. I said, wow, this is cool. Let me go to the caf. Do you mind if we break bread together? So I ran to the caf. I brought the bowl of soup and saltine crackers. And we did. And then this is what she said. So could you pray? What she said, could you pray? So we prayed. We prayed, we ate. And I told her that I will be back on Friday. This is what I told her. That happened on Wednesday. I will be back on Friday. So on Friday, I didn't come. I was busy doing some other stuff, and then I decided to run. I said, okay, no problem. But I did say I will come on Friday, but for some reason, I didn't do it. I came back on Monday. She passed. So I came back on Monday and I was devastated. And one of the other chaplains, he told me that her mother, she mentioned you, that the experience and how, and then she told us, they told to me that I would like to visit the church that you are pastor of. I said, I'm not, I don't have a church, but we can absolutely get together. So we talked about that, but that amount of weight that was on my shoulders for the entire week was overwhelming. I didn't do it. I didn't come to visit her. But one thing that helped me to actually reconcile all this situation was just one thing. We ate saltine crackers together. So of all that experience, saltine crackers were the ones who helped me to recover it by suffering as well. So this is what I would like us to do now. I would like us to eat saltine crackers. I have them here. I'm not joking. Because honestly, I think this is how Jesus could be seen among us. And then we'll pray.
You don't have one.
I will get one. I'll get two. Yeah. You can start eating anytime. Yeah. Because it's just breaking bread. It's just that experience of breaking bread together.
Need to pray, think and thank.
Okay. Give thanks, pray, exactly.
Then pray.
Yeah, okay, very good, very good, very good. Yeah. So yes, let me pray. Let me pray. So let's pray. Father of all people and of all nations, we come to you and we know that you're present among us. And right now we especially want to see you as the one who is a suffering Messiah, who is also the King, who is also the prophet, and who is also the priest. Because you suffer with us, and even in the midst of the most vulnerable moments in our lives, we know that you are among us. Because when somebody else enters into our midst and we break bread together, we see you in a powerful way. In your name we pray. Amen.
I have a question. 14 and my mind more. If you think about what's going on, the sense of the devil. Joel.
Yeah, it is.
Did Jesus?
I don't know.
Right.
The devil said.
Yeah, he's gonna have to.